Titan Fitness produces a number of power racks, and in this video we'll be taking a close-up look at the T2 power rack. This happens to be the shorter version of this rack, which is only 71.5 inches tall as compared to 83 inches for the full-size rack. Also, this rack weighs in at 93 pounds, while the other 107 pounds. Both racks have a capacity of 700 pounds, use 2-inch by 2-inch steel tubing, and have 1-inch J-hook holes. The shorter rack retails for just about $300 and the taller one for about $20 more. I purchased this rack used, and it had been sitting outside of a warehouse in Texas weather for some time. So you will see some rust in some places, which I'll be pointing out. But it held up pretty well. So let's take a look. The T2 comes with a straight bar, just like the black one you see up here. I picked up the option for the multi-grip bar. If you've got the budget for it, I highly recommend that you do. But let's take a look at the straight bar. As you can see, these two holes in that plate bolt directly into the vertical post using those two bolts right there. Now, as you can see, there's just a little bit of texture added on the right and left-hand side of this bar to make it easier to grip. There's no texture in the center, so if you're doing close grip pull-ups, you're either going to have to use straps or chalk. But I found there's just enough texture there to hold on without straps or chalk. And look at the other side, and as I mentioned, there's rust in certain places because this was outside. And again, on this side, you can see where it bolts into the vertical post. If you do decide to pick up the option with the multi-grip bar, there's some dimensions you need to keep in mind. First of all, it increases the height of your power cage by about 2 inches. The ceiling in this room is 96 inches. So if you do take this option, on the short rack it's about 20.5 inches from the ceiling. This rack is sitting on some plywood and some MDF and then some other cushion panels, so it's probably an inch shorter without that. But you need to keep these dimensions in mind whether you're getting either the short rack or the full-size rack, especially if you have lower ceilings. Now let's take a look at the footprint for this rack. The dimension across the front is 48 inches. And then the dimensions from front to back is again 48 inches if you put the feet on here. And I'm going to talk about taking these feet off later on in this video. But you're looking at basically a 48 by 48 footprint, except for one thing that I'm going to show you on the back side of this. So let's come around the back side and take a look at the dimensions here. You're going to notice this cross member sticks out a little bit further on both the left and the right hand side by about, 4 inches. That's the left rear. And then we come back over here to the right rear. And then let's zoom in. It's right at 56 inches wide in the back, so you need to keep that in mind depending on the amount of space that you have available. You're also going to see these two hollow posts on this side and on the other side. I'll show you in a second. I've got a standard 1-inch bar sticking in there. It's too large for standard plates, but you could use Olympic plates to act as ballast when you're doing pull-ups on this cage. The T2 series power racks are rather shallow, so let's come over here and take a look at this dimension. So from front to back, it's only 26 inches wide. Now, I do all my squats inside this cage, and I find that I have plenty of space to do so. If you're used to working out in a rack that's a little bit deeper, this might seem a little bit tight to begin with, but I've been doing my squats in here for some time, and I have no problems with it. After assembling the rack, I found that it wobbled quite a bit from left to right, and I was concerned that the previous owner had damaged it. So I decided to take a look at how square it was and checked all the different angles and found out it was pretty square, so that didn't seem to be the cause. I also checked the post to see if there was any distortion. So maybe the previous owner loaded it with too much weight and they got bent or dented or something like that. And looking at them with my straight edge all the way up and down, all four on both front and back, or left and right, I should say, they looked nice and square. So that wasn't the problem. So after some time and a lot of head scratching, I finally figured out what the problem was. This rack sits on 8 bolts. Those 2 bolts there, those 2 bolts there, and then these guys right here in the back, and these guys here on the front. So actually, the rack is sitting on these bolt heads which stick out underneath that bottom cross member. This is what was allowing it to wobble back and forth left to right. So what I decided to do was, in my platform, is drill holes so those bolt heads could fit down inside those holes, and those members could sit flat on the platform. The other thing I did was I took these feet off, because as you can see, they raise each side up by about, what, 1/8 of an inch, something like that. So with those off, those front to back members on the left and right hand side sit flat on the platform as opposed to up on those bolt heads. So if you're going to be setting this up on concrete or tile, you may want to keep that in mind. Perhaps take some wood like I've done here and drill holes for those bolts to sit down into. The T2 rack does not come with numbers. I put those on myself, and I have another video on how to do that. I'll put the link in the description below. And also, the short rack only comes with 21 holes. I drilled an extra 2 holes on the front 2 members for my squats and my standing presses. So it comes standard with 21. I'm guessing that the full size one comes with 22 or 23, perhaps 24 holes for the J-hooks. The T2 racks come with 2 very simple J-hooks. And these have a very slight slope which will roll your bar towards the front of the J-hook. If you've got the budget, I strongly recommend that you get a padded J-hook. Makes it much easier taking the bar on and off. They also come with 2 solid steel safety bars and a very simple locking mechanism that's very positive. And then, because this was outside for a while, you can see a little bit of rust on here. I seriously doubt if you keep this in your garage or inside your house, you're going to have problems with rust. And it has a little margin on the back side to make it safe. Very easy to move in and out and put into the lock position. Now let's take a look at the paint or the finish. Because I was drilling on this side has a few rough spots. But here on this side, it wasn't laying there. It's nice and smooth and clean. And then if we come up here, you can see there's still a nice gloss. And again, for having sat outside in the Texas weather and the Texas sun, I think this held up rather well. So if you're going to be keeping this in your garage or inside your house, I just don't think you're going to have much of a problem with the finish lasting for an extended period of time. Now let's take a look at some of the welds. I am by no means an expert on welding, but these beads seem to be okay. Again, this rack is rated for 700-pound capacity, and I don't see any reason why these welds wouldn't hold up. Now let's go over to the other side, look at some more welds. A little bit of rust from being outside on that one, but these welds look pretty good. And if I go all the way around to the rack, you can see basically the same quality in each of the welds. Also, each of these bolts has nylon inside of them, so they're self-locking. You don't need any lock washers on them to assemble the rack. Because this rack had been sitting outside for some time assembled, I was concerned about rust being down inside and perhaps weakening each of these posts. But as you can see, I put a light down in here, and I'm not seeing any rust that gives me any heartburn. So whatever coating they put inside or whatever treatment they put inside this seems to be working pretty well. It took me approximately 25 to 30 minutes to take this apart, and then maybe 45 minutes for me to put it back together by myself using my power tools. I've done several other videos on this power rack and related accessories and put them in a playlist, and I put the link to that playlist in the description below. Well, I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please press like and share with your friends. If you're not already a subscriber, I would love to have you as a subscriber. And as always, good luck with your fitness.